I still remember that rainy Tuesday morning when my world fell apart. After 8 years of marriage, I came home from my night shift at the local diner to find the locks changed and my belongings in garbage bags on the front porch. My hands trembled as I called my husband David, only to hear his cold voice. "It's over, Sarah. I've moved on. Don't try to come back." I stood there, rain soaking through my waitress uniform, staring at the house we bought together. Well, the house I bought, technically. My inheritance from my beloved grandfather had paid for the down payment, but David's name was on all the paperwork. I trusted him completely when he said it was easier that way with his credit score. What a fool I'd been. My phone buzzed again. A text notification from our joint bank account. Balance, $0. 8 years of savings gone. My separate account, also emptied. He'd had access to everything because I'd trusted him. Because I believed in our marriage. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. With nowhere else to go, I loaded what I could into my old Honda Civic, the only thing still in my name, and drove to my mother-in-law Patricia's house. Maybe there had been some mistake. Maybe she could help me understand what was happening. I should have known better. Patricia opened her door wearing her signature pearl necklace and disapproving frown. Behind her, I could see David's sister Amanda smirking. Well, Patricia said, looking down her nose at my wet, bedraggled appearance. "I suppose you're here to beg for money now that David's finally seen sense." "Patricia, please," my voice cracked. "I don't understand what's happening. Everything's gone. The house, our savings." "Oh, honey," she laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Did you really think someone like David would stay with a waitress forever? He's finally moving up in the world, and he needs someone more suitable." She adjusted her designer watch. "Though I must say, you lasted longer than I expected. Most gold diggers would have shown their true colors years ago." "Gold digger?" I whispered, stunned. "I paid for our house. I supported him through his MBA." "With your grandfather's money," Amanda chimed in. "Which you've been lording over David for years. Well, now he's paid you back. Guess you'll have to find another rich old man to mooch off of." I stood there, rain mixing with my tears, as 8 years of memories rewrote themselves in my mind. All those family dinners where they'd subtly mocked my job. The way they dismissed my contribution to David's success. How they'd never accepted me, the poor girl from the wrong side of town who dared to marry into their precious family. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice stronger now. "Where's David?" "On his honeymoon," Patricia said with a cruel smile. "With Jessica. You remember her? His new executive assistant. They've been seeing each other for months. She comes from a good family, you know. She'll be much better at supporting David's career than you ever were." The world spun around me. Jessica. The woman he'd hired 6 months ago, who he'd insisted on working late with so often, who'd smiled sweetly at me at the company Christmas party while apparently sleeping with my husband. "You knew." I realized, looking between Patricia and Amanda. "You all knew he was cheating." "Of course we knew," Amanda rolled her eyes. "We helped him plan everything. Jessica's father is on the board of David's company. This marriage will do wonders for his career. Unlike you, who's been holding him back with your embarrassing little waitress job." "Now," Patricia said, reaching for her door, "I suggest you leave before I call the police. And don't bother trying to fight this in court. Our family lawyer has everything handled. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get nothing." The door slammed in my face, leaving me alone in the rain once again. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, too shocked and broken to even cry. The next day, I tried to check into a cheap motel, only to find my credit cards canceled. My phone was next. Apparently, it had been on David's plan. Within 48 hours, I had nothing but my car, the clothes in my garbage bags, and $237 in cash. I managed to find a bed at the local women's shelter. The irony wasn't lost on me. I volunteered here for years, never imagining I'd end up staying here myself. The shelter director, Grace, remembered me from my volunteer days and gave me a private room usually reserved for emergency cases. "You're in shock, Sarah," she said gently, bringing me a cup of tea. "But you're stronger than you know, and when you're ready, we'll help you fight back." I didn't believe her then. How could I fight back? David had taken everything, planned it all perfectly. He had his family's money, their lawyers, their connections. I was just a waitress with a worthless degree in social work. trying to make ends meet while supporting my husband's dreams. But Grace was right about one thing. I was in shock, so much so that I almost missed the most important detail of all. A detail that would change everything. It happened 3 days into my stay at the shelter. I was helping in the shelter's kitchen. I couldn't afford to pay for my stay, but I could at least cook when I heard excited whispers from the front office. The CEO of Montgomery Industries is here. What's Alexander Montgomery doing at our shelter? I heard he's doing a series of surprise visits to local charities. I froze, nearly dropping the pot I was holding. Montgomery Industries, David's company, the place he'd worked his way up to middle management, always complaining that he deserved more recognition, faster promotions. I'd never met anyone from his work. He'd always said I wouldn't fit in at corporate events. But I knew about Alexander Montgomery. Everyone in town did. The brilliant young CEO who'd taken over his father's company 5 years ago and transformed it into a tech giant. The businessman who put our small city on the map. The man who, if the gossip was true, had no patience for dishonesty or corruption in his company. Before I could decide whether to hide in the kitchen, Grace came rushing in. "Sarah, Mr. Montgomery is asking to speak with all our residents. He's making a large donation and wants to hear their stories firsthand. Would you be comfortable joining the group?" I looked down at my shelter-provided clothes, touched my unwashed hair. I don't know, Grace. I'm not really presentable." "Nonsense," she said firmly. "You're one of us now, and your story deserves to be heard." So that's how I found myself sitting in a circle with 15 other shelter residents, facing Alexander Montgomery himself. He wasn't what I expected. Younger than I'd imagined, maybe in his mid-30s, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No fancy suit, no arrogant attitude. He listened intently to each woman's story, asking thoughtful questions, taking notes. Then it was my turn. "I'm Sarah," I said quietly. "I'm here because my husband emptied our accounts and changed the locks while I was at work. He works for your company, actually." Alexander Montgomery's head snapped up, his pen freezing mid-note. "What did you say?" I couldn't stop now. The whole story poured out. The 8 years of marriage, supporting David through his MBA, buying our house with my inheritance, discovering his affair with his executive assistant, his family's cruel dismissal. "He's David Chen." I finished, my voice barely a whisper. "In middle management, he just married Jessica Williams. Her father is on your board." The room was dead silent. Alexander Montgomery's face had gone completely still, his eyes intense. "David Chen," he repeated slowly. "The one who's been pushing for a senior director position, who's been claiming his wife is fully supportive of his career moves." I laughed bitterly. Supportive? I didn't even know he was divorcing me until I found my belongings in garbage bags. "Grace," Alexander said suddenly, standing up. "May I use your office for a moment? Mrs. Chen and I need to have a private conversation." "It's Ms. Miller now," I corrected quietly. "I'm going back to my maiden name." He nodded, a strange expression crossing his face. "Ms. Miller, then. Please, come with me." As I followed him to Grace's office, I had no idea that this conversation would change everything. That within 24 hours, David's perfectly planned new life would begin to crumble. And it would all start with 5 simple words from Alexander Montgomery. "I've been looking for you." I followed Alexander Montgomery into Grace's small office, my heart pounding. He closed the door and turned to face me, his expression intense. "5 years ago," he said, "did you write a business proposal for a corporate-sponsored chain of community resource centers?" My mouth fell open. "How did you?" "It crossed my desk when I first became CEO," he continued. "Brilliant concept. Combining job training, childcare, and social services in economically disadvantaged areas. The financial projections were sound. The community impact analysis thorough. But when I tried to contact the author, Sarah Miller, she vanished. The email bounced back, the phone number was disconnected. I sank into a chair, memories flooding back. That was right after I married David. He said the proposal was too amateur, that it would embarrass him at work. He made me take it down from all the submission portals. Said I should focus on supporting his career instead. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Do you know what happened to that proposal, Ms. Miller?" "Nothing, because your husband buried it. He accessed the company's submission system using his credentials and withdrew it without your knowledge." We found the digital trail during a system audit last year. We couldn't locate you. He? What? My voice shook. But why? Because David Chen has been taking credit for other people's work for years. We've suspected, but couldn't prove it. He's very careful. Very manipulative. Alexander sat on the edge of Grace's desk. The proposal's withdrawal caught our attention because it was exceptional. I've been looking for its author ever since. Tears filled my eyes. All those nights I'd worked on that proposal, dreaming of making a difference. All while David was apparently sabotaging me. There's more, Alexander said gently. 2 months ago, David presented a modified version of your proposal to the board. Claimed it was his original work, part of his bid for the senior director position. Jessica's father has been championing him for the role. A bitter laugh escaped me. So that's why he chose now to leave. He finally found a way to use my work for his advancement. Ms. Miller, Sarah. Alexander leaned forward. I'd like to offer you a job. As director of our new Community Impact Division, your original proposal will be the foundation, but you'll have full resources to expand it. Starting salary is $250,000, plus benefits and stock options. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. But I'm just a waitress. No, he said firmly. You're a brilliant strategist who's been systematically undermined by an abusive husband. That ends today. He pulled out his phone. With your permission, I'd like to call our legal team. David Chen committed corporate fraud by stealing and misrepresenting your work. That's grounds for immediate termination. My head spun. But his new wife, her father. Board member or not, fraud is fraud. And something tells me Mr. Williams won't be so supportive once he learns the truth about his new son-in-law. Everything moved quickly after that. Alexander's legal team arrived within the hour. They took my statement, gathered evidence. By morning, the truth about David's fraud was exposed. He was fired publicly, his corporate accounts frozen. Jessica's father, horrified by the scandal, immediately annulled their marriage. I wasn't there when it happened, but Amanda later told me in a desperate attempt to reconcile once she realized I was now a company director, that David and Jessica returned early from their honeymoon to find their keycards deactivated and security waiting. How dare you? David had apparently shouted at Alexander in the lobby. Do you know who my new father-in-law is? Was, Alexander corrected calmly. The marriage has been annulled, and Mr. Williams sends his regards, along with a recommendation that you find employment far, far away from our industry. That's when David saw me standing beside Alexander in a designer suit, a gift from the company's stylist. His face went white. Sarah? What are you doing here? Taking back what's mine, I said calmly. The proposal you stole, it's being implemented. The career you tried to destroy, it's flourishing. The woman you discarded, she's your new boss's right hand. Patricia and Amanda tried damage control, of course. Suddenly they were calling constantly, leaving tearful voicemails about family loyalty. But I had a new family now, the incredible team at Montgomery Industries who welcomed my ideas and valued my contributions. The women's shelter where I'd stay became the pilot location for our first community resource center. Grace joined as program director. Within a year, we'd opened 10 more centers across the state. David, last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst in a small firm 3 states away. Jessica married a wealthy developer, and Patricia loves to complain about how her new daughter-in-law married down. As for me, well, that's another story. One that started with late nights working on center proposals with Alexander, strategy sessions that turned into dinner discussions, meetings that lingered long after the agenda was complete. I'm not him, Alexander said one evening as we watched the sunset from his office. I'll never try to dim your light. I know, I replied, because I did know. I learned the difference between someone who wants to possess you and someone who wants to see you soar. 2 years after that rainy day when my world fell apart, I stood in a grand ballroom of the Montgomery Industries headquarters. Hundreds of employees and community members gathered to celebrate the opening of our 15th resource center. And now, the MC announced, please welcome our Community Impact Director and newest board member, Mrs. Sarah Montgomery. As I took the podium, my wedding ring catching the light, nothing flashy. Alexander knows I prefer elegant simplicity. I saw my old mother-in-law in the crowd. Patricia had wrangled an invitation through a business contact, no doubt hoping to reconcile now that I'd married up. But I wasn't the same woman she dismissed in the rain. Meeting her eyes, I smiled and began my speech. 5 years ago, I wrote a proposal about the power of community support, about how everyone deserves a chance to rebuild, to grow, to shine. Today, we're not just opening another center, we're making that vision reality. I paused, my hand resting on my slightly rounded belly, our first child still our secret for a few more weeks. Sometimes, life's greatest betrayals lead us exactly where we're meant to be. Sometimes, losing everything means making room for everything you've ever dreamed of. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living your truth so boldly that those who tried to break you become nothing but a footnote in your success story. Alexander squeezed my hand as the room erupted in applause. And in that moment, I sent a silent thank you to David. His cruelty had freed me. His betrayal had led me here. I'd lost a husband who dimmed my light, but I found a partner who helped me shine. I'd lost a fake family who valued status, but I built a real one based on love and respect. Most importantly, I found myself, the woman who'd always been there, waiting to emerge. Strong, capable, unstoppable. That night, as Alexander and I drove home to our modest house, we could afford bigger. But I love this one's cozy garden, he asked. Any regrets? I touched my growing belly, thought of our expanding centers, our passionate team, our future together. Just one, I smiled. I should have checked the company submission portal years ago. He laughed, the sound warm in the quiet car. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to. And you know what? He was right. Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its cruelest moments. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you never knew you were looking for. And sometimes a rainy Tuesday morning when your world falls apart becomes the first chapter of your greatest adventure. I sat in the pristine lobby of Maxwell Industries, my hands shaking slightly as I reviewed my presentation one last time. After 15 years of living in my sister Victoria's shadow, I was finally about to step into the light. The marketing director position at Maxwell was my dream job, and my innovative digital campaign strategy was exactly what they needed. Miss Sarah Maxwell, the receptionist called. They're ready for you. I gathered my materials, straightened my blazer, and walked toward the conference room with confidence I'd practiced for weeks. This was my moment. But the moment I opened the door, I knew something was wrong. The executives' faces were tight with barely concealed hostility. The CEO, Thomas Maxwell himself, wouldn't meet my eyes. Ms. Maxwell, he began, his voice cold. I'm afraid we need to address some concerning information we've received about you. My stomach dropped as he slid a folder across the table. Inside were fabricated email screenshots showing me leaking confidential information from my previous jobs, fake performance reviews describing me as unstable and untrustworthy, and even doctored photos suggesting inappropriate behavior at company events. I recognized the handiwork immediately. Only one person could have done this. We've received these from a highly trusted source, Thomas continued, someone who claims to have worked with you extensively. Given these serious allegations, I'm sure you understand we can't proceed with this interview. I knew defending myself was pointless. Victoria's reputation in the industry was impeccable. The youngest VP at Sterling Communications, the golden girl of digital marketing. My word against hers would mean nothing. I understand, I said quietly, gathering my things. Thank you for your time. As I walked out of Maxwell Industries, my phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Heard your interview went badly. So sad. But you know what they say. Cream rises to the top. You'll never be successful like me, little sister. Know your place. I smiled, thinking about the meeting I had scheduled for that afternoon. Victoria had no idea that while she'd been building her reputation at Sterling Communications, I'd been building something much bigger. 3 years earlier, I'd started Phoenix Digital as a small marketing consultancy, operating under my mother's maiden name, Sarah Chen. Victoria never paid attention to my little freelance business, too busy climbing the corporate ladder to notice what I was creating. Through careful strategy and innovative campaigns, Phoenix Digital grew rapidly. I reinvested every penny of profit, acquired smaller agencies, and developed proprietary marketing technology that revolutionized how companies approach digital advertising. Last year, I transformed Phoenix Digital into Phoenix Corporation, a holding company that now owns 30 marketing and technology firms across the country. Our latest acquisition, Maxwell Industries. The paperwork would be finalized tomorrow morning. Thomas Maxwell didn't know it yet, but he just insulted his new boss. I drove straight from the failed interview to my real office, the top floor of the Phoenix building downtown. My assistant, David, met me at the elevator. "How was your morning of playing rejected job applicant?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Enlightening," I replied, settling behind my desk. "Is everything ready for tomorrow's Maxwell acquisition announcement?" "Yes, Ms. Chen. Though I still don't understand why you went through with the interview when you already own the company." I pulled up Victoria's text message. Let's just say I needed to understand exactly who I'm dealing with. "How's the Sterling communication situation progressing?" David handed me a tablet displaying financial reports. Sterling's stock has dropped 30% since we started acquiring their clients. Victoria's performance metrics are falling. Sources say she's desperate to jump ship. And the position we posted at Phoenix. Her application came in this morning. Interview scheduled for next month. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city skyline. Victoria had spent years sabotaging my career, convinced that her success depended on my failure. She'd spread rumors, undermined my projects, and poisoned my professional relationships. But she'd been so focused on keeping me down that she never noticed me building an empire around her. Now, every major marketing firm in the city was either owned by Phoenix Corp or struggling to compete with us. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Victoria. "Don't feel too bad about Maxwell. Some people just aren't cut out for success." Dinner at Mom and Dad's on Sunday. I thought about our parents who'd always believed Victoria's lies about me, who dismissed my business ventures as cute little projects, while celebrating Victoria's every promotion. They had no idea that their unsuccessful daughter now controlled a billion-dollar corporation. That the little sister they pitied was about to become one of the most powerful people in the industry. "Thanks for the concern," I texted back. "Can't make dinner, too busy with work." "Good luck with your job search." David cleared his throat. "The Maxwell acquisition papers just came in. Would you like to sign them now?" I picked up my pen, thinking about Thomas Maxwell's dismissive expression, about Victoria's smug text messages, about years of being treated as second best. "One more thing," I said. "When Victoria comes in for her interview next month, make sure she waits at least an hour in the lobby. I want her to really appreciate the moment she realizes exactly who she's dealing with." I signed the papers with a flourish. Tomorrow, the business world would learn that Phoenix Corporation had acquired Maxwell Industries. In 1 month, Victoria would learn that her unsuccessful little sister owned not just Maxwell, but half the marketing firms in the city. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them discover just how wrong they've been all along. That evening, as I reviewed the final details of the Maxwell acquisition, my phone lit up with an industry news alert. Sterling Communications loses 3 major accounts to Phoenix Corp. I smiled, imagining Victoria's panic as her perfect world began to crumble. She had no idea that every account she lost, every client who abandoned Sterling, was part of my carefully orchestrated plan. "Ms. Chen." David appeared at my door. "The board meeting is about to start. They're eager to hear about the Maxwell acquisition." I stood up straightening my jacket, the same one I'd worn to the failed interview that morning. "Have we received Victoria's complete application package for the Phoenix position?" "Yes, including a rather impressive letter of recommendation from Sterling's CEO." "Perfect. Frame it. I want it on my wall when she comes in for her interview." Some people say success is the best revenge, but I've learned that true satisfaction comes from letting people destroy themselves while you quietly build an empire they never saw coming. 1 month after the Maxwell acquisition, I sat in my executive office reviewing the morning's agenda. Victoria's interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. It was now 10:15. "How's our guest doing?" I asked David through the intercom. "Getting quite agitated," he replied, amusement in his voice. "She's mentioned her senior VP status at Sterling about 12 times. Should I send her in?" I glanced at her framed job application on my wall, right next to the news article about Phoenix Corp's acquisition of Maxwell Industries. "Give her another 15 minutes. I want her to remember every second of this." The past month had been transformative for both of us. While Phoenix Corp's success made headlines, Sterling Communications hemorrhaged clients. Victoria's perfect record crumbled as account after account moved to Phoenix's subsidiaries. My phone buzzed. A text from our mother. Victoria's so stressed about this interview. Please tell me you're not still upset about that silly Maxwell thing. She was just looking out for you. I didn't reply. Let them keep believing that Victoria was the successful one. The truth would be so much sweeter coming as a complete surprise. At 10:30 sharp, I pressed the intercom. Sent her in. Victoria burst through the door in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her confidence faltered slightly when she saw the size of the office, the view of the city, the clear signs of power she hadn't expected to encounter. I'm so sorry, she began, her voice sickly sweet. But I've been waiting for over an hour. I had a meeting scheduled with Sarah Chin, the CEO. I turned my chair slowly, watching as recognition dawned on her face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Victoria's expensive purse slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a thud. Hello, sister, I said calmly. Please have a seat. She stumbled backward. This is impossible. You're not, you can't be. Sarah Chen, owner of Phoenix Corporation, the CEO who just acquired Maxwell Industries. I smiled. The same Maxwell Industries where you sabotaged my interview? Please sit, we have so much to discuss. She sank into the chair, her face ashen. But, you've never what? Succeeded? Built anything worthwhile? I pulled out a folder. Let's review your application, shall we? It says here you're looking for new opportunities because Sterling Communications isn't providing enough growth potential. Interesting, considering how their troubles began right around the time Phoenix started acquiring their clients. Victoria's eyes darted to the door. You orchestrated Sterling's decline. Just like you orchestrated the failure of every job opportunity I ever had. I opened my laptop, turning the screen toward her. Shall we look at the emails you sent to Maxwell? Or perhaps the ones you sent to Anderson Media last year, or Thomson Digital the year before? That was different, she protested weakly. I was protecting my position. You weren't ready for those roles. No, I corrected her. You were sabotaging me because you couldn't stand the idea of me succeeding. But here's what you never understood, Victoria. While you were playing corporate politics, I was building an empire. I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall of screens behind me lit up, showing Phoenix Corp's organizational chart. Dozens of companies, including Maxwell Industries, all connected back to my position at the top. Every time you blocked my path to a job, I acquired another company. Every time you spread lies about me, I signed another client. And now, I gestured to her application. Now you're begging me for a job. She straightened in her chair, attempting to recover her dignity. You can't what? Fire the entire Maxwell board for how they treated me last month? Already done. Acquire Sterling Communications. That deal closes next week. Tell our parents that their unsuccessful daughter now owns half the marketing firms in the city. That's happening at dinner on Sunday. Victoria's face crumpled. Please, I need this job. Sterling is falling apart. Sterling is falling apart because I wanted it to, I said quietly. Just like I wanted you to sit in that lobby for an hour and a half, feeling exactly how I felt every time you made me wait outside an interview, knowing you'd already sabotaged my chances. I stood up, walking to the window. But unlike you, I'm not going to sabotage your career. Instead, I'm going to show you exactly what it feels like to earn success on your own merits. What do you mean? I turned back to her. I'm offering you a job, Victoria, not at Phoenix Corp, but at one of our smallest subsidiaries. Entry-level position. No special treatment, no fancy title. You'll start at the bottom, just like I did. Every promotion, every opportunity will be based solely on your actual performance. Entry-level? She whispered, horrified. But I'm a senior VP. Not anymore. Sterling's board accepts my purchase offer tomorrow morning. So what will it be? A chance to prove yourself without sabotaging others, or would you prefer to explain to our parents why you're unemployed? The next day, Victoria started her new job as a junior account coordinator at a small digital marketing firm in the suburbs. She didn't know it yet, but every report about her performance would come directly to my desk. That Sunday, I hosted a family dinner at my penthouse apartment, the one I'd kept secret all these years. Our parents arrived first, their eyes wide as they took in the obvious signs of wealth they'd never noticed before. "Sarah," Mom began hesitantly, "we had no idea." "No," I cut her off, "you didn't, because you chose to believe what Victoria told you about me instead of seeing what I was actually building." The truth came out over dinner. Every detail about Phoenix Corp, about Victoria's sabotage, about my years of quiet success. Our parents sat in stunned silence as their understanding of their daughters completely reversed. "Why didn't you tell us?" Dad finally asked. "Would you have believed me? Or would you have dismissed it as another cute little project while praising Victoria's latest promotion?" Victoria arrived last, wearing the standard business casual attire required at her new entry-level position. She looked exhausted after her first week of actual work. "How's the new job?" I asked innocently as she slumped into her chair. "Fine," she muttered. "The commute is long. The work is demanding." But I replied, "Maybe now you'll understand that true success isn't about keeping others down. It's about building something meaningful." Later that evening, after our parents and Victoria had left, I stood on my balcony looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably crying about her fall from grace. Our parents were likely questioning every assumption they ever made about their daughters. But I felt no satisfaction in their distress. Instead, I felt something better: freedom. Freedom from pretending to be less than I was. Freedom from Victoria's constant sabotage. Freedom to finally be recognized for what I built. The next morning, I received Victoria's first performance review from her supervisor. Struggling to adapt to entry-level responsibilities. Expects special treatment. Needs to improve basic skills. I smiled and filed it away. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone's success. It's about forcing them to earn it honestly for the first time in their life. 3 months later, Victoria was still at her entry-level job, learning what it meant to work without shortcuts or sabotage. Our parents had stopped comparing us at family dinners. And me? I was too busy running my empire to worry about proving myself anymore. Success, I'd learned, doesn't need to be announced. Sometimes it's better to let people discover it on their own, preferably while sitting in your lobby for an hour and a half. I never thought my biggest achievement would become my greatest betrayal. Standing in the kitchen of the Golden Spoon, the restaurant I'd built from nothing into a $2 million success, I watched my brother Marcus swagger around like he owned the place. Because as of yesterday, he did. "Hey sis," he smirked, running his finger along the spotless steel counter I'd just polished. "Don't forget to clean the grease traps before you leave. That's part of the kitchen staff's duties, right?" Kitchen staff. The words hit me like a physical blow. Just yesterday, I was the owner and executive chef of Boston's most talked about fusion restaurant. Today, I was just another employee, and it was all thanks to my parents' twisted sense of fairness. I'm Sofia Martinez, and this is how I lost everything I worked for. Or so my family thought. The story really begins 5 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of culinary school, and bursting with dreams bigger than our family's modest food truck business. My father, always cautious, wanted me to stick with what was safe. "Sofia, why take risks? The food truck makes enough to live on," he'd say, counting the day's modest earnings. But I saw more potential. Years of watching my grandmother cook had taught me that food wasn't just sustenance, it was art, science, and magic combined. So I took a leap. I sold my car, emptied my savings account, and with a small business loan, I leased a tiny space in an up-and-coming neighborhood. The kitchen was barely bigger than our food truck, but it was mine. The first year was brutal. 18-hour days, burns, cuts, and endless worry about making rent. While Marcus partied his way through business school on our parents' dime, I was perfecting recipes and building a clientele one plate at a time. But I had a secret weapon, Grandma Sofia's recipes, with my own modern twists. She taught me everything she knew before she passed, including her special techniques for enhancing flavors. The secret, she'd whisper, is in the timing and the touch. Cooking is like love. It needs patience and passion. Slowly, word spread. Food critics started noticing. The Golden Spoon offers an unprecedented fusion of traditional Latin flavors with modern molecular gastronomy, wrote the Boston Globe. Reservations became harder to get. We expanded once, then again. By year 3, we were grossing over $2 million annually. I had a staff of 30, a waiting list months long, and plans to open a second location. My parents, who dismissed my dreams as foolish, suddenly became very interested in my little restaurant. That's when Marcus graduated. With his fancy MBA and zero real-world experience, he couldn't find a job that matched his inflated sense of self-worth. That's when my parents had their brilliant idea. "Sophia, honey," my mother said during our weekly family dinner, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Your brother needs a proper career opportunity, something worthy of his education." I should have seen it coming. The extra visits from my parents, their sudden interest in the restaurant's operations, the way they kept emphasizing how family helps family. Then last week, they dropped the bomb. "We've decided it's best if you sign the restaurant over to Marcus," my father announced, sliding papers across the table. "He has the business education to take it to the next level. You can stay on as head chef, of course." I stared at them, waiting for the punchline. "You want me to give away my restaurant? The one I built from nothing while Marcus was partying through college?" "Don't be dramatic," my mother sighed. "Marcus has an MBA. He knows how to run a business properly. You're a chef, just focus on cooking. It's what you're good at." Besides, Marcus added with his trademark smirk, "I've already got investors lined up. We're going to franchise, modernize, streamline operations, turn this place into a real business." I wanted to scream, to fight, to tell them exactly where they could stick their papers. But then my father played his trump card. "The building lease is in my name, Sophia. As your guarantor, I can make things very difficult if you don't cooperate. Think about your staff. Would you want them to lose their jobs because of your selfishness?" They had me cornered. The lease was ironclad. I'd needed my father as guarantor when I first started, and he'd never let me change it despite my success. One word from him to the landlord, and I'd lose everything. So I signed. Yesterday, I watched Marcus prance around my restaurant like a peacock, explaining his vision to my loyal staff. He'd already replaced our carefully crafted menu with laminated pages of standardized dishes. More efficient, he called it. Better profit margins. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been preparing for something like this for months. Call it intuition or paranoia. But I'd seen the way they looked at my success. The way Marcus kept talking about untapped potential. So I'd made my own plans. "Sophia," Marcus's voice yanked me back to the present. "The health inspector is coming tomorrow for the quarterly review. Make sure everything is perfect. We don't want any unfortunate incidents on my first week as owner." I nodded, keeping my face carefully blank. "Of course, Marcus, everything will be exactly as it should be." He didn't notice my slight smile as he walked away. He didn't know about the second set of books I kept, documenting every shortcut he'd insisted on taking this week. He hadn't bothered to check the security cameras I'd installed, or review the staff training protocols, or even look at the health code regulations. Most importantly, he didn't know about my grandmother's special recipes, the real ones, not the simplified versions we used in the restaurant. The ones that required exact temperatures, precise timing, and ingredients you couldn't just order from any supplier. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "All set for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp." I texted back a single word. "Perfect." Tomorrow, Marcus would learn that some recipes aren't just about the ingredients. Sometimes the secret ingredient is justice, served at exactly the right temperature. I looked around my kitchen. Yes, it would always be my kitchen, and started my prep work for tomorrow. After all, I wanted everything to be perfect for the health inspector's visit. What my family had forgotten in their rush to take my restaurant was one simple truth. I hadn't succeeded just because of recipes or business sense. I'd succeeded because I understood that a restaurant isn't just about food. It's about attention to detail, about systems and safeguards, about knowing every inch of your operation. Marcus might have my restaurant on paper, but tomorrow you'd learn what really makes a successful restaurant run. And it's not an MBA. I closed the walk-in refrigerator door, double-checking the temperature gauge. Everything was exactly as it should be. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The next morning, I arrived at the restaurant 2 hours early, just like I had every day for the past 5 years. The only difference was that today, I wasn't alone. Marcus was already there, pacing nervously in his expensive suit. "What are you doing here so early?" he demanded, his usual smirk replaced by obvious anxiety. Prep work. I replied calmly, tying my apron. Same as always. He followed me into the kitchen, hovering as I checked the temperatures on all the refrigeration units. Look, about the health inspection. You've handled these before, right? It's just a formality? I paused, looking at him steadily. Nothing in the restaurant business is just a formality, Marcus. Every detail matters. He didn't like that answer. Just make sure everything's perfect. Dad says our profit margins are too thin to risk any disruptions. I almost laughed. Our profit margins had been excellent until he started making changes. In just 1 week, he'd switched to cheaper suppliers, extended food storage times, and ignored basic safety protocols that I'd spent years perfecting. At exactly 9 a.m., the front door chimed. But instead of one health inspector, 3 people walked in. I recognized Maria Torres, our usual inspector, but the other 2 were new. One wore an FDA badge, the other carried a laptop and camera. Marcus rushed forward, hand extended. Welcome, I'm Marcus Martinez, the owner. Actually, Maria interrupted, consulting her clipboard. Our records show this establishment was recently transferred from Sofia Martinez to Marcus Martinez. Is that correct? Yes, Marcus said proudly. I'm implementing some exciting changes. That's precisely why we're here. The FDA agent cut in. Recent ownership transfers often coincide with operational changes that can impact food safety. We'll need to conduct a thorough inspection. Marcus's face paled. Thorough? Yes. Temperature logs, supplier records, security footage, staff certification documents, everything. The agent's eyes narrowed. Is that a problem? Of course not. I stepped forward. All our records are properly maintained. I'd be happy to show you everything. The next 2 hours were excruciating for Marcus. The inspection team went through every inch of the restaurant, documenting everything. They reviewed the security footage showing Marcus instructing staff to ignore proper cooling procedures. They found the new supplies from unauthorized vendors. They discovered that Marcus had turned off the automated temperature monitoring system because the alerts annoyed him. But the final blow came when they reached the storage area. Can you explain these? Maria held up several containers of unlabeled spices and marinades. Marcus shrugged. Just some special seasonings, family recipes. Without proper labeling? Without documented ingredients or allergen information? The FDA agent's pen scratched across his notepad. And these were added to food served to customers? I stepped forward. Actually, those are new items Marcus ordered. They haven't been used in food service. Our approved ingredients are all properly labeled and stored in the main kitchen. I led them to my station, where everything was immaculate, labeled, and properly documented. The contrast was striking. The inspection team huddled together, speaking in low voices. Finally, Maria turned to us. Mr. Martinez, based on our findings, we're issuing an immediate suspension of your food service license, pending major corrections and a re-inspection. Marcus exploded.
Good morning.
You can't do that. Do you know how much money we'll lose? This is all her fault. He pointed at me accusingly. She set this up. The FDA agent raised an eyebrow. Mr. Martinez, are you suggesting your sister somehow forced you to violate health codes? No, but she... Marcus stopped, realizing how he sounded. I should mention, I said quietly, that I have extensive documentation of all operational changes made in the past week, including emails where I advised against these violations. Marcus's face turned purple. You planned this? No, Marcus. I just maintained the standards that made this restaurant successful. Standards you ignored because you thought your MBA made you smarter than years of actual experience. The front door chimed again. This time, my father burst in, followed by my mother. They must have been waiting nearby. What's going on? My father demanded. Marcus called us. Mr. Martinez. Maria interrupted. Perfect timing. As the building leaseholder, you should know that multiple critical health code violations have been documented under the new management. This facility cannot legally operate until all issues are resolved and a new inspection is passed. My parents turned to Marcus, who was now sweating through his expensive suit. It's not my fault. She sabotaged me. By what? I asked calmly. By maintaining proper records? By following health and safety regulations? By documenting your decisions that put our customers at risk? The FDA agent cleared his throat. Given the circumstances, we'd strongly recommend returning operational control to the previous owner, who clearly understood and maintained proper food safety protocols. My mother stepped forward. Now wait just a minute. Actually, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. I've already received several offers to purchase the restaurant. Since Marcus has demonstrated he can't maintain the required standards, perhaps it's best if I sell to someone who can. You can't sell it, my father sputtered. Marcus owns it now. I smiled. Check the transfer papers you made me sign, Dad. I only transferred operational control, not the underlying business entity. I still own the corporation, the recipes, and the Golden Spoon brand. Marcus just owns the right to operate this location, a right he's now lost due to health code violations. The silence was deafening. And since the health department has suspended operations, I continued, this seems like the perfect time to accept one of those offers. I'm thinking the restaurant group that owns La Maison down the street. They've been very interested in my grandmother's recipes. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it and smiled. In fact, their final offer just came in. 3 times what the restaurant is worth, plus a position as executive chef overseeing their entire restaurant group. Should I take it? Marcus lunged forward. You can't. Actually, she can. A new voice joined the conversation. A man in an expensive suit stepped in from the bar area. I'm James Chen, CEO of Providence Restaurant Group. We've been watching the Golden Spoon for some time. Sophia's innovative fusion cuisine and impeccable operational standards are exactly what we're looking for. He turned to me. The offer stands, if you're ready to sign. I looked at my family, my father's red face, my mother's shock, Marcus's defeat, and felt nothing but relief. I'm ready, I said, accepting the folder James held out. This is ridiculous, Marcus shouted. Mom, Dad, do something. But there was nothing they could do. They had overplayed their hand, forgetting that success in the restaurant business isn't about fancy degrees or quick profits. It's about passion, attention to detail, and respect for the craft. 2 months later, I stood in my new kitchen, 3 times the size of my old one, overseeing a staff of 50. The Golden Spoon brand had expanded to 3 locations, with 2 more in development. My recipes, my standards, my success. But now with the backing of a company that actually valued what I had built. Marcus, last I heard, he was working as a junior analyst at some corporation, his dreams of restaurant empire glory shattered by his own arrogance. My parents still won't speak to me, but that's fine. They had chosen their favorite child, and they could live with the consequences. As for me, I finally understood what my grandmother meant when she said the secret ingredient was patience. Sometimes you have to let people make their own mistakes. Sometimes the best revenge is simply maintaining your standards and waiting for justice to be served. At exactly the right temperature, of course. 10 years ago, I stood in our family's living room, my hands trembling as I held a crumpled $500 check that had bounced. The fancy chandelier that my parents had just installed cast harsh shadows across their angry faces. I was 22, fresh out of college and struggling to find my first real job during the recession. I trusted you. My father's voice boomed through our upscale home. $500, Sarah. A simple loan that you promised to repay. I flinched at his words. The money had gone to cover an unexpected car repair. I needed a vehicle for job interviews. I'd been certain my freelance web design payment would clear in time to repay the loan. But the client had disappeared without paying. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice barely audible. The client still hasn't paid me. I just need a little more time. My mother's perfectly manicured hand slammed down on our imported marble coffee table. More time? While you live here rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities, and now you can't even repay a simple loan. My older sister Madison smirked from her position on the designer sofa. She never missed a chance to witness my failures. This is why I told you not to help her, she said smugly. Sarah's never been good with money. Remember how she chose that worthless computer science degree instead of joining the family investment firm? I bit my lip, fighting back tears. Yes, I'd chosen to study programming instead of finance like Madison. I had dreams of creating something meaningful, not just managing other people's wealth. But at that moment, watching my sister's successful life contrast with my struggles, doubt crept in. I have some promising interviews next week. I offer weekly, as soon as I get a job. Enough. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. We've supported you through college, given you every advantage, and this is how you repay us. By becoming a deadbeat. The words stung like a physical slap. I'd never seen him this angry, not even when I'd announced I wouldn't be joining the family business. Get out, he said, his voice suddenly cold and quiet. My mother gasped. Madison's smirk widened. What? I stuttered, certain I'd misheard. Get out. He enunciated each word carefully. Pack your things and leave. Tonight. If you can't manage a simple $500 loan, you clearly need to learn some responsibility. Dad, please, I pleaded. It's just temporary. Once my business gets going. Business. Madison's laugh cut through the room like glass. Your little website projects. This isn't a business, Sarah. This is you playing around on a computer while living off mom and dad. My mother stood up, rushing invisible lint from her designer dress. Your sister is right. Madison joined the firm right after college. She's already managing major client portfolios. Meanwhile, you're chasing pipe dreams and failing to pay your debts. I looked around the room, at my father's unmovable expression, my mother's disappointment, Madison's satisfaction, and something inside me hardened. Years of being compared to my successful sister, of having my choices questioned, of being the family disappointment. It all crystallized in that moment. Fine, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll leave. I turned and walked upstairs to my room, grabbing the largest suitcase I could find. As I packed my clothes and personal belongings, I could hear Madison downstairs. It's about time, she was saying. She needs to learn that money doesn't grow on trees. Not all of us can be successful like me. I shoved my laptop, my most valuable possession, into my backpack along with all my programming books and hard drives. They might not see value in my skills, but I knew technology was the future. My mother appeared in the doorway as I was zipping up the suitcase. Sarah, she sighed, this is for your own good. You need to learn financial responsibility. I straightened up, meeting her eyes. Thanks for the lesson, Mom. As I dragged my suitcase down the stairs, my father stood by the front door, holding an envelope. Here, he said gruffly, $200. Find yourself a room somewhere until you sort yourself out, and don't come back until you've learned the value of money. I stared at the envelope but didn't take it. Something in me had shifted. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave with nothing from them. Keep it, I said quietly. I'll manage on my own. Madison snorted. Good luck with that. Try not to end up homeless with your worthless computer skills. I walked out into the cool evening air, my entire life packed into one suitcase and a backpack. My ancient Honda Civic, the source of all this trouble, sat in the driveway. At least it was running now, even if the repair had cost me everything. As I drove away from the only home I'd ever known, tears finally spilled down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of determination. My family thought they were teaching me a lesson about money, but they were actually giving me something far more valuable. Freedom. I had $237 in my bank account, a working laptop, and a brain full of coding knowledge that my family thought was worthless. It would have to be enough. That night, I slept in my car in a Walmart parking lot, using my laptop to apply for every programming job I could find. But I didn't just send resumes, I started coding. If no one would hire me, I'd build something myself. By morning, I had the basic framework for a revolutionary financial software platform, one that would help small businesses manage their cash flow and avoid exactly the kind of situation that had destroyed my relationship with my family. I didn't know it then, but that first night of homelessness was actually the first night of my empire. The next 10 years would transform me from the family failure into someone they desperately wished they hadn't thrown away over $500. The irony? That bounce check would turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes hitting rock bottom is exactly what you need to start building a mountain. As I curled up in my car that first night, Madison was probably sleeping in her luxury apartment, secure in her success at our family's firm. She had no idea that in 10 years, she'd be the one desperately needing my help. Except she wouldn't recognize me as the billionaire she was begging to save their company. Little did any of them know, being kicked out wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. And when they finally realized who I'd become, that $500 would seem like pocket change compared to what they lost by throwing me away. 10 years later, I stood at the window of my penthouse office, staring down at the city below. The financial software platform I started coding that first night in my car had evolved into Cashflow Technologies, one of the most successful fintech companies in the world. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Walker, the meeting with Kingston Investment Group is in 10 minutes. Their entire board is here." I smiled faintly. Kingston Investment Group, my family's company, though they had no idea I was connected to Cashflow Technologies. The press called me the Ghost CEO because I never appeared in public, never allowed my photo to be taken. The world knew Sarah Chen, the mysterious founder of Cashflow, only has a signature on documents and a voice in virtual meetings. "Send them to the main conference room," I replied. "I'll be there shortly." I checked my reflection in the window. Gone was the desperate 22-year-old who'd slept in her car. In her place stood a woman in a tailored suit, radiating quiet confidence. The last decade had transformed me in ways my family couldn't imagine. The first 2 years after being kicked out had been brutal. I'd worked as a barista during the day, coding my software at night in a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford. But slowly things had started changing. A small tech incubator had noticed my prototype. Then came the seed funding, the first major clients, the viral growth as small businesses discovered my platform. By year 5, Cashflow Technologies was revolutionizing financial software. By year 8, we were worth billions. And now, in a delicious twist of irony, my family's company was on the brink of collapse, desperately seeking investment from the very person they'd once thrown away over $500. I walked into the conference room, noting how the Kingston board members sat up straighter. My father occupied the center seat, looking older than I remembered. Madison sat beside him, her designer outfit not quite hiding her obvious anxiety. My mother perched nearby, clutching her premium leather portfolio like a shield. None of them recognized me. 10 years, a different last name, and success had changed me beyond their ability to see their failure daughter. "Good morning," I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Let's discuss Kingston's situation." My father cleared his throat. "Ms. Walker, we appreciate you taking this meeting. As I'm sure you know, Kingston Investment Group has been a respected name in finance for 30 years. And now you're hemorrhaging clients, bleeding money, and 3 months away from complete collapse," I interrupted smoothly. "Your recent attempts to compete with modern fintech platforms have failed spectacularly. You're here because you need a miracle." Madison flinched. She'd been in charge of Kingston's modernization efforts, all of which had failed miserably against Cashflow's superior technology. "We prefer to think of it as an opportunity for strategic partnership," my father attempted. I opened the folder in front of me. "Let's be honest, Mr. Kingston, you need Cashflow Technologies to save you. The question is, why should we?" My mother leaned forward. "Our client relationships, our history, our reputation are worth nothing if you can't keep up with modern financial technology," I completed. "Your company is dying because you refuse to adapt. You chose to cling to outdated methods while the world changed around you." Madison's face flushed. "Our methods worked perfectly well for decades. Just because some upstart tech company generated more revenue last quarter than Kingston has in its entire history." I raised an eyebrow. "Tell me, Ms. Kingston, how is that philosophy of refusing to change working out?" She fell silent, her expression reminding me of the smirk she'd worn the night they kicked me out. I stood up, walking to the window. 10 years ago, Kingston turned down an opportunity to invest in Cashflow Technologies. Your exact words were worthless computer projects, if I recall correctly. My father frowned. "I don't remember." "No, you wouldn't." I turned back to face them. "Just like you probably don't remember throwing your youngest daughter out over a $500 loan." The room went completely still. My mother's portfolio slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed in the silence. "Sarah?" Madison whispered, her face draining of color. I smiled coldly. "Hello, family. Surprised to see what worthless computer skills can accomplish." My father half rose from his chair, then sank back down. "But, you're Sarah Walker, the Ghost CEO. Amazing what a person can achieve when they're not being constantly compared to their successful sister," I said, returning to my seat. "Now, about Kingston's future." "Sarah, honey," my mother started, her voice sugary sweet. "If we'd known, family should stick together. Family, I laughed. You threw me away over $500. Now you want my help when you need billions? Madison found her voice. That was different. We were trying to teach you responsibility, and I leave finance for threatened it, along with some other valuable lessons about who to trust. I opened another folder. Cash Flow Technologies will be acquiring Kingston Investment Group. Your clients will be transitioned to our platform. Most of your employees will be retained. Acquiring? My father's voice cracked. But we're not for sale. Check your shareholders' agreement, I said quietly. Cash Flow has been buying Kingston shares through subsidiary companies for the past year. As of this morning, we own 51% of your company. The blood drained from his face as he realized the truth. His company, his legacy, now belonged to the daughter he'd thrown away. You can't do this, Madison protested weakly. I already have. I stood up. The press release goes out in an hour. Oh, and Madison, about that corner office you're so proud of, I'll need it cleared out by Friday. My mother burst into tears, perfectly timed as always. Sarah, please, we're your family. No, I corrected her. You stopped being my family the night you chose $500 over your daughter. I'm just the CEO making a business decision. After they left, I returned to my window, watching their expensive cars pull away from the building that bore my company's name. My assistant appeared with a glass of champagne. Congratulations on the acquisition, he said. Though I suspect this was about more than just business. I took the glass, remembering that first night in my car, coding through tears and determination. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so high that the people who hurt you have to crane their necks just to see how far you've come. The press release went viral within hours. Ghost CEO revealed. Tech billionaire acquires family business that once threw her out over $500. My phone exploded with messages from long-lost relatives suddenly remembering their dear cousin Sarah. I ignored them all, focusing instead on transforming Kingston into something better. The family name would fade from the company, replaced by innovation and progress. Everything they'd resisted for so long. Sometimes at night, I drive past my old family home in my Ferrari, remembering the girl who left with nothing but a laptop and determination. The house seems smaller now, less impressive. Just like the people who once seemed so powerful to me have shrunk in the shadow of what I've built. The $500 check that bounced. I had it framed. It hangs in my private office, a reminder that sometimes being thrown away is just the universe's way of forcing you to soar. My family, they still try to contact me sometimes through lawyers and intermediaries. They want to reconcile now that I'm worth billions. But I learned long ago that true family doesn't have a price tag. And that $500 they kicked me out over, I donate that amount every hour to programs helping homeless youth start tech companies. Because sometimes the best way to heal old wounds is to ensure no one else has to suffer them. The view from the top isn't about looking down on those who hurt you. It's about being able to see clearly who you always were, even when they couldn't.